Today, I want to do something a little different. Most of the time, I try to explain what is happening right now. I try to give you a framework, a way of reading events, a method for seeing structure before the headlines flatten everything into noise. But today, I want to make a prediction. And before I make it, I want to go backward. Because if you do not understand how we arrived here, then what I am about to say will sound extreme. If you do understand how we arrived here, then it will not sound extreme at all. It will sound like the logical end of a pattern that has been visible for a long time. Go back with me to May 2024. Joe Biden is still president. Donald Trump is still facing criminal charges. Most people in the media are saying Trump cannot win. Most people are saying there will be no war with Iran. The world still looks on the surface relatively stable. And in that environment, I made three predictions. I said Donald Trump would win the election. I said the United States would go to war with Iran. And I said the United States would lose that war and that the loss would permanently change the global order. Two of those predictions have already come true. Trump won. America went to war with Iran. So now everyone is staring at the third prediction and asking whether it can really happen. What I want you to understand is that I did not make those predictions because I have some mystical ability to see the future. I made them because I was using a method. I call that method predictive history. Predictive history is not magic. It is not intuition pretending to be science. It is not ideological storytelling. It is a disciplined way of thinking. You look at structure, you look at incentives, you look at historical patterns that keep reappearing because human beings are still human beings and empires are still empires. First, structure, geography, demography, economic systems. These things change slowly. They define what is possible and what is fantasy. Second, incentives. In game theory, every player is maximizing something. So the real question is never only what a country says it wants. The real question is what it actually needs. Third, history. Not because history repeats exactly. It does not. But because certain strategic patterns appear again and again, especially when great powers overestimate one form of strength and underestimate another. So let us use that method. Now let us ask the real question. How does this war end, not with a fake exact date? Nobody honest can give you that. What I can give you is the direction. I can show you where the logic is pushing. And once you see that logic, it becomes very hard to imagine the clean American victory story that still dominates so much public discussion. Let us begin with the players because any serious prediction begins there. What does America say it wants? It says it wants to stop Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. It says it wants peace. It says it wants regional stability. Now ask the deeper question, what does America actually want? America wants to preserve control over the global oil system because the global oil system underwrites the petrodollar. And the petrodollar underwrites American financial power since the 1970s. Oil being priced and traded in dollars has created permanent global demand for the American currency. That permanent demand is one of the hidden foundations of American empire. It helps Washington finance its military, run chronic deficits, and sustain a level of global reach that would otherwise be far more difficult and expensive. So strip away the speeches, and America's deeper interest becomes very clear. Control the energy arteries, preserve the petrodollar, preserve the empire. That is what America actually wants. Now look at Iran. Iran says it wants the blockade lifted. It wants its frozen funds released. It wants its sovereignty respected. All of that is true. But what does Iran actually want? First, survival. Iran has watched the United States spend decades trying to isolate it, weaken it, and, if possible, destroy it as an independent strategic actor. It watched Iraq collapse. It watched Libya be destroyed. It watched Syria be torn apart. Tehran understands a lesson that many outsiders still refuse to understand. If it does not resist, it does not get peace. It gets dismantled. So survival comes first, but survival is not enough. Iran also wants recognition. It wants to emerge from this war not just alive, but established as a permanent regional power. It wants sanctions eventually broken. It wants the Strait of Hormuz not just as a temporary wartime lever, but as a lasting source of economic and strategic leverage. It wants its allies and proxies protected as part of any final arrangement, not traded away, like disposable assets. Now look at Israel. Israel says it wants security. It says it wants Iran contained or neutralized. But what does Israel actually want? Israel wants to prove that it can serve as the most capable, disciplined, technologically superior power in the region. It is not only fighting for survival, it is auditioning for a larger role in a Middle East where America may be less willing, less able, or less trusted to do the old imperial work itself. And what do the Gulf states want? Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, they want survival too. They want exports to continue. They want the energy system to keep functioning. They want to stay close to whichever side proves dominant. They do not want to be crushed between stronger powers. So those are the players. Now, let us move to structure because structure, not rhetoric, decides which ambitions are realistic. Structural fact number one, America can dominate the air war, but that does not mean it can win the war. This is one of the clearest lessons in modern military history. Air power can destroy, it can degrade, it can punish, it can terrify, but it struggles again and again to produce decisive political transformation by itself. North Vietnam did not surrender because it was bombed. Germany did not surrender because bombing alone broke its will. You can damage a state from the air. You cannot easily remake a determined society from the air. That matters here because the American opening advantage in this war is real, but limited. Structural fact. Number two, America cannot win a clean ground war in Iran. Iran is not Iraq. It is not a flat, easily penetrated battlefield. It is a large, mountainous country with around 90 million people, hardened infrastructure, distributed weapons systems, underground networks, and decades of preparation for exactly this possibility. You do not invade a country like that and get a quick solution. You get a long war, a dirty war, a costly war, and a war that starts eating political capital inside the invading power faster than it produces strategic clarity. That is why my first direct prediction is simple. There will be no full American ground invasion of Iran. I know people say ground troops are coming. I know Marines move and planners posture, but the people around Trump who actually understand what such an invasion would mean know what it implies. It implies years of war. It implies casualties on a scale the American public will not tolerate. It implies financial strain. It implies a potential draft conversation. It implies the destruction of Trump's political future. So, no, I do not believe there will be a full ground invasion. Structural fact number three, the cost exchange favors Iran over time. This is not because Iran is richer. It is because it is fighting asymmetrically. Iran can launch relatively cheap drones and missiles. America has to answer with vastly more expensive defensive and offensive systems. Iran can regenerate disruption more cheaply than America can regenerate the architecture needed to suppress that disruption. That kind of exchange can be endured for a short war. It becomes corrosive in a long one. Structural fact. Number four, the economic pressure is real and it grows every day. Hormuz carries roughly 20% of the world's oil. Yemen has threatened the Red Sea, another vital artery. If both choke points remain unstable, then the war ceases to be merely military. It becomes economic. Oil spikes, shipping costs rise, fertilizer becomes more expensive, food prices follow, inflation intensifies, political patience erodes. And that matters because America's real weakness in this conflict is not military hardware. It is political will. Only a limited share of the American public supports a prolonged war like this. That number falls, not rises. As casualties mount and economic pain spreads, America has lived through this pattern. Before Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, long wars without clear victory slowly poisoned the political system. Iran understands this very well. For years, Tehran has studied American behavior. It knows the United States has a pain threshold. The entire Iranian strategy is designed around pushing Washington toward that threshold. Now, let me split the future into scenarios. Scenario one, America does not send ground troops. It keeps this primarily an air war. In that scenario, America keeps bombing. Iran keeps firing drones and missiles. Interceptor stocks shrink, costs rise, oil stays elevated, the political pain grows, markets deteriorate, opposition inside the United States deepens. And then eventually, Washington looks for a face-saving exit. Trump goes on television and says some version of the same sentence every empire says when it has to step away from an unsatisfying war. We achieved our objectives. We significantly degraded the enemy. We are bringing our people home. That is scenario one. Scenario two. America does send ground troops in this scenario, pressure from Israel, and the Gulf states becomes overwhelming. Trump feels cornered. He concludes that air power alone will not impose the outcome he wants, so he escalates into a real ground commitment. I think this scenario is much less likely, not because it is unimaginable, because it is politically and structurally suicidal. It would mean a war on terrain Iran has spent decades preparing to defend. It would mean exactly the kind of prolonged conflict that destroys American domestic support, American stockpiles, and American fiscal stability all at once. So let me give you my second direct prediction. This war ends with America withdrawing from the Middle East within 12 to 24 months, not because Iran will destroy the United States militarily, because the cost of sustaining the war will become higher than the cost of leaving it. The economic pressure will keep building. Oil will stay structurally elevated. Markets will stay fragile. Opposition inside the United States will rise. Trump's approval will suffer. And at some point, the larger powers outside the war, China, Russia, India, will make it increasingly clear that the world system cannot keep absorbing this level of disruption. At that point, Washington will start looking for an exit. not because it has been tactically crushed, because the broader political and economic cost of persistence will no longer make sense. That brings me to my third prediction. After America leaves, the Middle East will reorganize around two regional poles. Iran on one side, Israel on the other. Iran will dominate the eastern side of the regional equation through Hormuz. Energy leverage and its links to Russia and China. Israel will dominate the western side through technology, intelligence, military integration, and its role in the India, Middle East, Europe corridor. That is the broad shape of the post-American order I expect to emerge. Now let me address the obvious questions first. Will nuclear weapons be used? My answer is no. I am highly confident nuclear weapons will not be used in this war. Nuclear weapons remain the ultimate taboo in modern international politics. Since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that taboo is held. It is one of the strongest norms in the entire system. The threshold is extraordinarily high. Second, will Trump negotiate directly with Iran? Not in the clean, stable way people imagine. Iran has no reason to trust direct American assurances. The nuclear deal already taught Tehran that signed agreements can be torn up when political winds change in Washington. So Iran may bargain around America through intermediaries, through pressure, through phased arrangements, but it has strong reasons not to believe a neat direct agreement with Washington will solve its strategic problem. Third, how long will this take? That is the hardest question. Empires move slowly. America has vast resources. It can drag this on longer than many people expect. So I do not want to pretend this ends next week or next month, but my directional estimate remains the same. Within 12 to 24 months, America will be looking seriously for an exit within 2-3 years. The broad outlines of the new Middle Eastern order will be visible. I cannot give you an exact date. What I can give you is the direction. And the direction is this. America is leaving the Middle East. Iran is rising. The petrodollar is weakening, and the world is becoming multipolar faster than Washington is willing to admit. That is my prediction. And I want to end where I began. This is not prophecy. It is not a mystical performance. It is predictive history. It might be wrong. I might be wrong. And if I am wrong, we will come back, analyze why, and refine the method. But right now, if you ask me where the structure is pointing, I think the answer is clear. The United States can dominate the opening phase of this war. It can win in the air, it can punish, it can degrade. What it cannot do is turn that superiority into a clean political ending at a price its own system is willing to bear. And when an empire reaches that point, the ending may take time, but the direction is already set. That is the story here. Not simply war, not simply Iran, not simply Trump, but the visible beginning of an American retreat from a region. It can still damage, but no longer shape on its own terms.